Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 25th and tonight's classic is The Haunting. The Haunting is another movie that I have seen before doing this. There are actually a lot of the ones coming up in this last week, but I remember absolutely loving this movie when I saw it the first time. But I have heard that you can only really know a movie that you've seen at least twice, so I rewatched it today, and while I am kind of apprehensive about giving this score out, if there's any movie I've seen this month that deserves a 10 out of 10, it is The Haunting. I cannot think of a single thing in this movie that didn't work and work very well. It was a great movie from start to finish, and the ending legitimately gave me chills. Honestly, it ranks up there among the best horror movies I've seen in my entire life, and I am not exaggerating. Released in 1963, The Haunting was an adaptation of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, directed by Robert Wise, who's made a lot of very high-profile movies. The Sound of Music, West Side Story, The Andromeda Strain, Sand Pebbles. The plot, of course, is about Hill House, this one house that seems to have been haunted since before it was even built, or anybody even lived there. People keep dying at the house, there's a lot of mysterious things, nobody wants to stay there for very long, and a scientist named Dr. Markland uses this house as a basis for an experiment to see if he can actually prove the existence of the supernatural. He gets some people to help with this experiment, including the main character, Eleanor Lance. This was a wonderful main character, and the acting by Julie Harris was incredible. The entire movie is just looking into this woman's head and seeing all the different things she's thinking and how the house is affecting her. This is the best example I've seen of that sort of slow, quiet, creeping horror used in movies like this. A lot of it is stuff that you don't see as opposed to stuff that you do see, and it's very effective. One scare that's used a couple times in the movie, and it works very well, is that people will be in a room, usually at night, and they'll hear banging outside the room, and it will get closer and closer, and then it will stop at the door, and then it will either keep going and passing by, or it will start bashing into the door and trying to open it. The characters definitely give off the feeling that they both really want to know what's behind that door and never want to look behind that door and see what's actually there. This movie didn't need impressive special effects or jump scares in order to build horror. It did it very well using very little. Aside from that, this movie also just has really good characters. Eleanor is a very good lead. You do get into her head and figure out what she's thinking. You learn a lot about her. This is a very well-established main character. But besides her, you also have the three other people who are taking part in this experiment. Dr. Markway is very fun, very intellectual, but still kind of playful. You also have Luke, one of the other people. He's actually the person who's going to inherit this house. He's a total skeptic. He's also kind of snarky. He's pretty fun. And then we have Theo, the other woman in the experiment. She is she claims to be psychic, have ESP. Theo is really confident and blunt, which is a sharp contrast to Eleanor, who's very quiet and reserved and apologizes all the time. We've all met those people, or at least seen characters like that. And the setting of Hill House is one of the best I've ever seen in a horror movie. This house is perfect for a film like this. It's big, it's gothic. I can't really see it, but they say there's no right angles anywhere. There are a lot of mirrors that are hung at an angle, so you see weird angles from stuff when people walk in front of it. But this house is just beautifully creepy. It's actually a very pretty location, but there's also something unsettling about it. The Haunting has a great setting, great characters, and a perfect execution in order to build the psychological horror throughout the movie. The entire thing, it just keeps building up, getting more and more crazy until the very end. I can absolutely see why this movie is a classic. It is one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. Very well done. Huge recommendation from me. I loved The Haunting. And now let's go into a few spoilers, but I really would prefer if you just saw the movie and not get spoiled of it and then maybe come back later. One of the things about Eleanor is that she spent a lot of her adult life taking care of her sickly mother, and the mother died a few months prior, and she's been basically crashing on her sister's couch, and her sister is horrible to her, and this all leads to when she gets the invitation from the doctor to do this experiment, she actually steals the car and runs away. So she's basically just leaving her life behind to do this. And when she's in Hill House, she's definitely the one who's most susceptible to all the stuff that's happening. And eventually it becomes clear that the house specifically wants her. To do what with her, they don't know, but it's definitely taken an interest in her and wants her to stay. And that also starts creeping into her mental state as well. You keep hearing this inner monologue in her head, and you feel the tone change. It starts out with her being freaked out by this place to her almost like feeling honored, like this place wants me, something's finally happening to me, because throughout most of her life, she's always felt like unwanted and like nothing's happened to her. And she sees this as an opportunity for greatness. It's the combination of both the house driving her crazy and a more logical, sane, trajectory her character is going, seeing how this is something that's finally happening to her and that she finally feels wanted. Things come to a head when the doctor's wife comes to visit, and she insists on staying in supposedly the epicenter of all the hauntings, the nursery of the house. And she stays there, and everybody else is down at the parlor that night, and they experience more paranormal activity. One of the best, scares in this movie is one where something literally pushes the door so hard that it, warps and bulges and looks like it's made out of rubber. Apparently, that was just somebody really strong pushing against a real wooden door, but you could have fooled me. When they leave the parlor and go up to the nursery, the doctor's wife is gone, and they look throughout the rest of the house, and this is the point where you see Eleanor completely give in and start, letting go and allowing herself to be consumed by the house. More things happen, and Eleanor almost dies in the house, but they make her leave, except she doesn't want to go. And when she's driving away, down the really long pathway to the front gate of the house, she starts feeling something start moving the steering wheel. And at first she starts fighting it, but then she sort of lets go and lets the car crash into a tree, and it kills her. The movie started out with a little spiel about Hill House, this house has stood for 90 years and would stand for 90 more, and it kept going. At the very end was, and those that walk in there walk alone. And the final thing in the movie is Eleanor's voice. It's you don't see her, you just see the house, and it's Eleanor's voiceover. And it's the same sort of thing. This house has stood for 90 years, will stand for 90 more. And the last line of the movie is, and we who walk here walk alone. That was just a wonderfully chilling ending to this movie, and honestly, probably the best way they could have ended it. Everything about this movie is just so cleverly done and expertly executed. It's probably as close to perfect as a horror movie could get. Obviously, I'm not saying it's objectively perfect. I'm sure other people can have different opinions about it, but for me at least, this is perfect when it comes to making a horror movie. It worked incredibly well. I've seen it twice, and I loved it both times. I would highly recommend it to anybody listening. Okay, I'll see y'all tomorrow.